What's going on, guys? It's Belair here. As we get closer to the World Championship, there's one question that I get asked every day. Probably, honestly, probably hundreds of times a day. I'm not sure. I haven't been counting. And that is Belair. If you had to take the 20 teams that will be participating at the World Championship in France in a couple of days and divided them into approximately 10 different tiers, how would you go about doing it? Well, I've done the exercise for you and I'd like to give it to you. Let's start out with the front runners. It's two teams in this first tier, and it's Carmine Corps and it's Falcons. I think when it all comes down to it, the only team that can beat a peaking version of that team, a peaking version of Carmine Corps, can only be beaten, in my opinion, by Falcons. A peaking Falcons can only be beat by Carmine Corps. Maybe there's a day where Carmine Corps, a weakened version of themselves, go up against a very, very, very solid version of Dignitas. Dig could win that. But if Carmine Corps is peaking and Falcons are peaking, I think those are the two teams who have the ability to overtake the other one. They're in a clear top two for me. And the next two are nipping on their heels. The next two teams in a tier two, contenders with huge asterisks. And those are Vitality and NRG. I've been pumping that Vitality stock all season long, and it's not to rage bait, and it's not to what's the term when you like take people's money? I'm trying to do like like a financial pump and dump. I'm not trying to pump and dump Vitality stock on you guys. For me, it's always come down to I could give you an hour and a half long spiel about all the reasons why Vitality cannot win it, how they have struggled domestically this year. I don't know, have they did they win a single regional? I can't recall. I feel like they didn't. Um, the fact that they have run through the groups and then fallen apart once they get into the playoffs, and even more so, don't forget that we've gone through layers of Vitality disappointment early in the season. It just seemed like they didn't have the juice. Remember, even back to the very beginning when they were playing that off-season tournament and they ran into Carmine Corps and got blasted, or the first series of the entire season, they lost to Fast Forward, and it's just like, what are you guys doing? Like, there was a lot of pressure for them. I was definitely somebody who did this, prop them up as the best team in the world before the season. And I won't derail myself too much by saying at the beginning it seemed like they didn't fully have the connective tissue that they needed to make this work. And now they've graduated into these mental hurdles where they're seemingly unable to overcome the challenge that faces them. Maybe it is a poor performance from Exotic. Maybe it is a less than graceful looking Monkey Moon going up against GK. Maybe it is Zen trying to hero ball. Maybe it is the fact that they seemingly always run into peaking versions of other teams. No matter what it is, there's some LA Clippers esque funk that is attached to the DNA of this Vitality squad, and they haven't been able to overcome that so far. I'm not saying that they can't. Now, if I were to give you that whole spiel, at the end of the day, I always come back to, but it's Zen and it's Monkey Moon and it's Exotic. And it's very difficult for me to put them anywhere other than third, especially given the fact that they had a very, very tight series there against GK, especially given the fact that they immediately turned around and went seven against what I have laid out, in my opinion, as a world class Team Falcons. After the disappointment of GK, they turn around immediately. They go 14 games over the course of 2.5 hours and looked competitive, even though I didn't think that it was the best version of them. So that's worth something to me. Next, we got to talk about NRG, the first North American team off of our board. They are contenders, excuse me, with a huge asterisk, just because I, they give me a funky feeling. How's that for some top tier analysis? Um, I just don't feel like we've got the best version of this team so far this year. They've been dominant within North America. Regionally, they've looked great, even though they've been pushed by Ultimates, by Genji at times, by SSG at times. Um, but they have still owned that region, rightfully so. But we have some other teams that are owning their regions that are kind of coming up against it. Furia, a team that we'll talk about in a bit. Excuse me. And um, I don't know. I just don't feel convinced, even in small ways where I try and talk myself into it. Like Johnny Boy's been posting these, probably like the best content. If I like woke up and I was like, I had the weirdest dream about Rocket League. It was perfect. Like the 2v2 mix-ups, choice. I love them. I've watched all of them that he's put out so far. Um, Even in that, beast mode not looking super dominant. And it's like you don't want to, I'm not trying to overreact to a random, basically ranked 2v2 that has no money attached and is not what the RLCS is and is not within the NRG context. But even when I'm trying to get those little wins of like, oh, maybe like beast mode's gonna look awesome because he's been grinding super hard. It's like I think he only won one game, maybe a couple. I can't recall for sure. Daniel looked good though. Daniel looks great in that context, and he's looked great within the context of NRG this season as well. He honestly, like I would still probably have beast mode ahead of him just because of some of the intangible things that I like about beast mode and playing team sports. I feel like beast mode is the kind of player that you kind of need on your team if you want to really compete. I don't think that Daniel being the best player and your vocal leader and trying to be like a charisma, I don't think that that works at this level. I could be wrong. We've seen versions of Daniel in the past where it didn't go optimally, but also Daniel has never been this version of a complete Rocket League player. I still am concerned about the shooting percentage. I know that that's maybe just a complete like whatever. It doesn't really matter. It matters to me just as somebody who cares about the stat piece of this. And then Atomic is always the third name out of your mouth when you talk about NRG. Maybe there's something there. One of the firmest memories I have of an NRG player this season was Atomic in Raleigh when they were going up against Twisted Minds. They're completely on the ropes. They go to overtime, Neo Tokyo Game 6, where he had just a terrible, probably low light of his career moment on that pitch last season. Atomic was great. Had a couple just completely necessary goal line saves, diving saves, great defensive stands. He did have that one in like the right side offensive corner where he like pinched it backwards on accident. We'll forget about that one. But there's a lot to like about this team. If we forwarded the clock and NRG lifted the trophy, I would be surprised, of course, just because of how they looked. But when you look at this roster, you can't be blown away. Tier 3, in a category all by themselves, titled A League of Their Own. Good job, Belair. That was really creative. I have Dignitas. I think I'm wrong on this team. I really do. I think that they deserve to be up here in this rung of potential contenders. Um, I think it's stupid. It is stupid, but I just when you look at those four teams and you look at the roster, the way that they're constructed, the players that they have, and then you look at Dignitas, it just seems it's a different tier. Um, Making it to a grand finals in Raleigh is definitely of note. Not making top 8 in Birmingham and not having a super memorable EWC, it kind of splits it for me as far as results go. They have looked great within Europe. They've been contending with the best and oftentimes beating some of the best. I think that they have a positive game record against Vitality. I know that they've traded with GK, but they own that one. They've beat Nip pretty handily all season long, and they have a victory over Carmine Core, maybe two if I'm not remembering correctly offhand. But it's tough for me to lift Dignitas into that top four. And it's very difficult for me to put them any lower because I think that the results have earned them the respect of being in a tier of their own, kind of connecting my true bona fide contenders to some of the rest of the pack. And that'll move us pretty nicely into tier 4. 3 teams in tier 4. This tier is called shocking but possible. Those teams are Ultimates, GK, Twisted Minds. Ultimates, I have the front of this list just because I've said that they've peaked too early, perhaps, but they do still, and I understand First Killer and all of the kind of swirling historical things that make you nervous and give you pause. For me, First Killer is still a true elite player within the RLCS, and any team that has one of those contends. We're going to talk about a couple more on these teams here in a second when we get to Twisted Minds for sure. So if you have an elite, true bona fide star, if you have an excellent supporting cast, Chronic, a player who has lifted a trophy before, who has been to a ton of LAN events, and LJ, a player who I think 2 seasons straight now has looked excellent at World Championships. That's a recipe for something, even if I feel like their results have dipped over the course of the season. They could definitely win it. I'd be blown away, but it is possible. GK would have been the lowest on this list for me, but I do think that I need to keep myself accountable and in check. And again, I was going back and looking over all the LAN results to kind of build this list just to make sure I wasn't, and EWC, I mean, they beat the brakes off so many good teams, getting out of the group of death, beating Furia pretty handily. It's just tough for me for a team that's has had so many peaks and valleys to be like, yes, EWC is the consistent benchmark moving forward. That's tough for me to get to, but I do think that Joyo does have the ability. We've seen it in the past, and he's still grinding to show this. He does have the ability to be a First Killer, a Nobu type player where just having him on your team is good for a couple of game wins, and that's something that you have to pay your respects to. Twisted Minds, Nobu, and I think if Atomic and Rise get it going, they can feed off of each other, and they get really vocal and animated and into it, and I think it's intimidating for other teams to see them kind of get onto a roll because their offense is one of the most potent in the entire RLCS. And if they can outscore teams, turn these into track meets, make these those, real aerial downfield football matches where it ends up being, a 45-48 scoreline, if they can be the RLCS version of that, if they can be the Phoenix Suns of old with the Steve Nash offense, I'm disappointed that I can't recall if it's the 6 or the 7 seconds or less. I think it's twisting my arm. I'm gonna go 7 seconds or less. Lock it in. Let me know in the comments if I won $1 million. If they can be that kind of an offense, we've seen that they can beat very, very good teams, whether it be Carmine Core or go very deep against NRG, a series that they certainly could have and probably should have won. All right, Tier 5, 2 teams, and this one is titled "I've Seen It in a Dream." This is an old. I think Michael from Shift was the first one to make me think about this exercise, and I love it. It's one of my favorite exercises where it's like you can have all the stats and the knowledge and the facts in order, but if you do the exercise of if you close your eyes and try and imagine 3 players lifting a trophy, can you do it? And I think for me, the tier above is where I cut the line. If you're curious what Belleair thinks, for whatever that's worth, as I sit here in my room, true contenders in my opinion: KC, Falcons, Vitality, NRG, Dig, Ultimates, GK, Twisted Minds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 teams that I think could genuinely lift the trophy. I draw a line at SSG and Furia because I think both of those teams could make deep runs and really put some people on notice, shock the community. Oh my God, look at SSG go. They are really building on what they've been doing the whole season. This is a new version of them. And as we go into the offseason, these players are going to be highly sought after. What a great story for North America to have new, a team with an identity like this that we can kind of look at and be excited about moving into next season. I could also see the same for Furia. They're in a lull, but again, we get so little international Rocket League. Who's to say this isn't the RLCS or the NBA equivalent of one of your star players? Remember when Darius Garland broke his face? And it's just like, well, I guess the Cavs are bad for a little bit, but then you kind of, or Kawhi Leonard being out, and then Clippers are on my mind because of the scandal that's going on. Pablo Torres' podcast and YouTube video, go watch it. It's certainly worth the hour and a half. But let me get it back on the rails here. Maybe this is just a version of that where it's like, yeah, Fury were bad for a little bit, but look at them now. Look at them thrive. Despite that, with all of the information we have about them over the course of the season with both SSG and Furia, could I really see them winning it all? It's very difficult for me. SSG, just because they really haven't been around long enough or got deep enough for me to be like, look at them kind of toeing the line. And for Furia, it's just very difficult for a team where the rub for me has always been that Yan and Drufinho, and I think it's Drufino. I've been adding an Enio in the middle for a long time, but mostly Yan because he's the best player and the one that you watch the most and the one you anticipate the most from. Him and best of sevens, just not consistent enough for me to be like they're gonna win several best of sevens in a row with increasing difficulty and lift a trophy. So I look, it could happen for sure with either of those teams. But for me, I draw a pretty hard line. Let's not say in Sharpie. Let's say I draw a line in Expo marker between them. All right. The next tier 6, 2 more teams titled Bracket Busters, Ninjas in Pajamas and Team Secret. I went back historically. I talked about this in a video recently where I wanted to see like how play-in or like wild card teams, like how they kind of made it through tournaments. Like, oh, maybe they could make a real deep run. History shows us, limited sample size, but history shows us that if you're in the play-in, like you can make a top 8, even a top 6, but like journey kind of ends there. And for Oski, who hasn't been to a LAN all season, for Radosin, who hasn't been to a LAN all season, for Nas, who this is his RLCS LAN debut, but played EWC or whatever, whatever the off-season tournament was. I get them mixed up. With G2, for this to be his first RLCS LAN after the M80 season and now this season, it's tough for me to be like, yes, that team is going to make a top 4 run. Even if they like really are hitting and figure it out and get into a flow, eventually you get to this point where you start looking around and you're like, are we really going to do this? And I think that they could kind of psych themselves out. And then Team Secret have gotten better and better and have become a very solid Rocket League team, which is underlined solid, very respectable. Swift is a player that I'm going to continue to keep my eyes on. I've been overwhelmingly impressed by Mata. And KV1 again, it's been around. I feel like I give the same. It's like when I was, you don't hear a song for years and years, but once it starts playing, you just remember all the lyrics. I feel like I say the same thing about Secret every time. That's kind of where I am with them. And I titled these 2 Bracket Busters because if it gets to one of those weird things where let's just pick a team out of a hat here and say NRG lose a series early and then they're going up against Ninjas in Pajamas in the lower to make top 8. Like that's a series that, a lot of people could have their whole projections ruined because of one of these 2 teams. Tier 7, one team by itself. And I've called this tier clouded judgment because I, Bel Air, cannot separate my heart. I can't separate my heart from the results of what this team has had and what I think is probably going to be their fate, and that's Gen G. Um, you know, Justin holds a special place in a lot of people's RLCS hearts. Um, that was a huge moment. He's had an awesome career. I've watched some Justin streams. I am a fan of him, and I feel like I, as somebody who is older than him, and probably some people watching this video, um, have seen saying that I've seen him mature sounds so stupid and wrong because like it's not like I've been with this guy every day. Like I've seen very sporadically, but him on podcasts or him talking, after matches or whatever. I feel like I've seen an arc of his career that I have a lot of respect for Justin, and I want good things for Justin. And then the other three, um, Cheese. I really like the player and the person that is Cheese. I like that archetype of a competitor and somebody who seems to really care and the origin story, and it's just something that I'm about. And then Magic Bear is probably probably the player that I have theorized and thought about and projected about within Rocket League the most over the last couple of years, because of what I feel like he um, could be is unfair. He's an excellent player, um, but I've watched a lot of Magic Bear replays, and he's just like so cold sometimes. Like he's so sick to watch. And I watch it and I just, you know, get wide eyed and I'm like, man, Magic Bear is like so good. Like, oh my God. And then Greg, friend of the Need Boost podcast, um, I want them to do well. My judgment is clouded. Okay. Tier 8, three teams. Made in Brazil, which was just officially announced. Ex Corinthians, Raise Bull, Drops and Brad, MIBR, Rock, and Shopify Rebellion. These are my LCQ snowball teams. Talked about this a second ago with Nip. We've seen, you know, the Semper team of the past, Oxygen of last year. There wasn't a wild card. We've seen some teams who have picked up steam throughout the LCQ and then end the season for a couple very good teams along the way. And I think MIBR, Rock, and Shopify Rebellion, it won't happen for all of them. It might only happen for one, but I feel like one of these three teams is probably going to look a lot better in the early stages of this tournament than we anticipated, and really put some people on notice. And I have them in that order: MIBR, Rock, and then Shopify Rebellion. It would be awesome if it was Shopify. Correction, I had put it in the notes of the last video, but I said that it was Rock, their land debut for all of them. It's not true. Twiz with Veloce played a couple of seasons back. Forgot about it. Thank you guys in the comments for reminding me of that. Yeah, I think that one of those teams will be upsetting somebody in a big way. Tier 9, we're getting down to the bottom. Two teams. This is the F it we ball tier. Not a lot of expectations once you get this low. Wild card. I don't know. It could happen. There's so much. There's so much. What's the word that I'm looking for? They've accrued so many repetitions of being at these events. These guys always represent OCE, and even though it's been a rough season, they've been representing OCE for a long time. They know how these events go. They're going to be here, they're going to prep, they're going to be ready. And at this point, just lay all the cards down and go all in, I think. Virtus Pro, a worse team on paper than Wildcard. If they played 100 times, Wildcard probably wins 70 of them, I think. Um, just as like a, off the dome. Um, but I do think that I've come around on Sosa especially as like a second option here. And don't forget the Catalysm has looked great defensively as well. Was that in Birmingham where he actually was like really putting some people on notice in a couple of those when they ended up they beat two OCE teams back to back. And he was awesome in, was it the Chiefs series? I can't remember for sure. And then finally, tier 10. I didn't bring any water, so my throat's getting dry. The consummate underdogs, Foot and TSM. I think that you can use that as an edge and use it to your advantage. You're going to be the underdog against every single team that you play. So put the pressure on them and try and punch them in the mouth early. That's something that Foot has got a couple reps at so far. And maybe it's something that TSM can look to replicate. So that's my list, guys. Thanks so much for taking time out of your day to hang out with me and talk some Rocket League. I'm excited. We're getting even closer. And I'm gonna try and do videos every day until Worlds. That's the Bel Air promise. Till next time, guys, take it easy.